So just really quickly, what is Minnesota Compass? So Minnesota Compass is a community indicators project, and we've been around for about 15 years. And what we do is we provide a common foundation of information, which is really community level data that we make available to communities across the state on our website, mncompass.org. We always want to thank our funders. This is a consortium of funders that support our work, and they support our work because they believe in data-informed decision-making, and they believe in making sure that everybody has access to the data that they need to understand their community. This is the data that we have available on our Minnesota Compass website. And I highlight this just to share with you that we have a pretty broad set of information on the Minnesota Compass website. For each of these topics, we select 3 to 4 data indicators with community advisory committees who recommend to us the data indicators that we should be including on the site. We don't include every single data point on education, for example. We work really closely with community advisors who guide us on the data that we include in our site. And I share this today, some of you may already be familiar with Minnesota Compass and the data that we do, or that the data that we provide. But for those of you who may not be familiar, this is the type of data that we provide on our site. And when I go through the Build Your Own tool, I'll highlight some of the ways in which the data varies just a little bit in terms of the data we provide across the site. And that's just because of the way that the data tool itself works. So as I mentioned, you're all here today to learn about the Build Your Own tool. So I'm going to be sharing with you just some brief background information on the tool before we get started on the demonstration. And then I'll switch over to the website to share with you how the Build Your Own tool works and some different features that you might be interested in. So this is the data that we have on the Build Your Own tool. You'll note that it differs just a little bit from the previous slide I shared on the data we have across the Minnesota Compass website. And the reason that differs is that the tool itself works so that we're able to pull out really small geographies, data for really small geographies. And some of the data that we have across the site, like information from the Minnesota Department of Education or the Minnesota Department of Health, some of that data, they just aren't available at really small geographies. The data that are available at really small geographies are listed here in the top right-hand corner of this slide. So American Community Survey 5-year estimates are the data that we use in the Build Your Own tool that are available at much smaller geographies than you get from some of those more administrative state data sets or some other data sets. We also use LEHD data, the Longitudinal Employment Household Dynamics survey, which is really kind of a hybrid of deed data and also census data. So providing you with information about our workforce. And then decennial census data, as well as information that we use on our in the Build Your Own tool. We don't have the most recent decennial census data included on the tool just yet, but we will get that updated in the next few months. So the data in the Build Your Own tool that we have available in terms of the geographies that we have available are listed here. So we have a pretty long list of geographies that people are always interested in accessing their data for their specific community. And the way that we developed this tool, we first started with neighborhood profiles for Minneapolis, St. Paul, and then Duluth. And then really people across the state, particularly in greater Minnesota, became interested in the different ways in which the Build Your Own tool could provide customized data for different geographies. So looking at not just neighborhoods and cities and counties, which are often kind of the standard data geographies that you see, but for school districts and for specific regions across greater Minnesota, for House and Senate districts, for zip codes and census tracts. So providing a way for communities to easily access data specific to their geographies of interest. We like to think of the Build Your Own tool as kind of a choose your own adventure story. If you remember those books as a kid, or if your child is reading those books, there are a lot of different ways in which the tool works and a lot of different functionality and capabilities and ways that you can pull out data. So this is kind of one way to think about it. The first adventure is to build a profile. So you can build a profile with just one geography. This is just one example for Todd County in central Minnesota. These are just a few sample data points I'm providing, but I'll share with you in the demonstration the list of data that are available to you. So 31% of households in Todd County earn less than $35,000 annually. And then there are some additional information listed there on employment and housing. The other thing that you can do with building a profile is to combine geographies together. So you can build a profile with multiple geographies. You can take Olmsted, Winona, and Fillmore counties, for example, click those on the map, and the tool will take the data for each of those counties and aggregate them together into one profile. And that works for any of the geographies that were listed on the previous slide. So you could do that for cities, you could do that for school districts, census tracts, any of those work. And then just again, a few sample data points to share with you some of the data that are listed in the data table. The other adventure that you can take or go on, if you will, is to compare profiles. So you can easily just select on the map one geography to compare. So you could do cities and cities. So this is St. Cloud and Rockville. Just again, a few sample data points. The percent of residents who are foreign born in St. Cloud is 12%, and in Rockville about 4%. Or you can compare different geographies. So you could compare counties and school districts. This again is just one example. So taking Olmsted County and comparing it to an aggregated profile that you've built. So looking at 3 school districts in that area. You could also compare, you could really compare any type of geography that you're interested in or across geographies. So these are just a few examples. Okay, and then just again, a sample data point for you to be aware of that are included in the data profile. You could also compare neighborhoods in cities. So this gives you an example for 5 neighborhoods in Minneapolis. This was aggregated together, and then you can compare it for the city of Minneapolis. Okay, so again, just a few sample data points there. And then the third the third adventure is to draw a profile. So if you are not interested in looking at any of the predefined geographies that are listed on the Build Your Own tool, what you can do is there are some draw tools, some different features that you can use to actually draw the area that you have an interest in. And again, just a couple of examples. So you can draw a profile for the Greater Twin Cities United Way service area. Their service area just kind of goes right down in between Washington County. And so for this service area, it may be more useful to draw that out and get data accessibly through the tool that way. For some of the micropolitan areas like St. Cloud or Rochester, you could draw the neighborhoods that are of interest. So this is just an example, Northside Hester Park. These are different Rochester neighborhoods that you could go ahead and draw on the tool. And then for folks who are in micropolitan areas, but also more rural areas, sometimes the county data that you are looking at is sometimes skewed, or you don't want to see that larger micropolitan area in that county. So the tool allows you to draw around some of those larger areas. So for Olmsted County, you could take out the city of Rochester and just look at the other side of Olmsted County if you wanted to. And that's a similar request that folks often get for St. Louis County as well. So let's take a look at this in action. I'm just going to stop my slides here and share my screen. Let's see, make sure everyone can see that. All right, can everybody see my screen okay? Give me a thumbs up on your. Great, awesome. All right. So this is our Minnesota Compass website. For those of you who are new to our site, this will look brand new to you. For those of you who are not new to our site, you might notice that we've had a bit of a facelift, a bit of a refresh that was launched in January of this year. So all of the content is still there. It just looks a little bit different. So just very quickly, so the first slide that I shared with you in terms of all of the data that we have available on Compass, much of that is listed here on these different topic areas where you can find a myriad of different data sources. And then here is really where the different geographic data, as we refer to it, lives. So we have information specific to cities, counties, regions, the state of Minnesota, a few neighborhoods, IRRR, which is the Iron Range Resource and Rehabilitation Region in northeastern Minnesota, and then the Minneapolis neighborhoods as well. And then what we've done is we've built out all of this geographic information into the Build Your Own tool as well. So when you're looking for the Build Your Own tool, it's right here, Build Your Own Custom Profile. So under where they live, and then Build Your Own Custom Profile. So we select that here. And you'll see here are the three different, adventures, if you will, that I was referring to. There's build, there's compare, and there's draw. So for build a profile, we'll start there, and I'll just give you a couple of examples. So you can select statewide, and here are where all the different geographic areas that were listed in the slideshow that I shared with you are here. And so you first select which geographic area you are interested in. Twin Cities is listed here. So if you're interested in looking at specifically Minneapolis neighborhoods or communities, that's listed here. I'll take that off. So you can see those here. We also have a couple of different smaller geographies for Minneapolis, which are rapid bus station areas and light rail station areas too. And then if you're interested in the Duluth neighborhoods, those are listed here. And so you can find all of those here. We have a couple of different geographies that may be of interest for Duluth too. But for the time being, I'm going to stick with the state. So we'll go here. The tool allows you to kind of move around as you need to. You can zoom in as you need to and find where you're looking for. I'm going to start with a couple of cities. So we'll go here. And we'll go up to northern Minnesota here. So I'm zooming in. And I'm just going to do this area here, kind of near Brainerd and Baxter. So if for this area, you can take each of these cities and combine them. So once those are selected, they show up here. If you've accidentally selected one, you can always just take it off as you need to, and then go back and select whatever you were hoping to select. Okay, we'll add Fort Ripley there too. And then once you're finished and you've made all of your selections, you select View Profile. And the profile will come down. You'll still be able to see it on the map here. And then the whole data table is listed here. And it's pretty long. And so one of the things that we always want to make sure we're sharing is that you can collapse these rows so you can see just where these topic areas are. And so sometimes that helps people kind of find what they're looking for. So maybe you're interested in income and poverty, then you can access just the data for income and poverty here. Or for residency, there's a couple of different options. For those of you who are really interested in looking at margins, those are listed here. So you can select those if you wanted to check out the margins of error. This is, of course, really important if you're doing a lot of work with really, really small geographies, or even in greater Minnesota with really small geographies. You always want to check those. We do have a threshold that we don't provide data that we don't feel is reliable. So if the margin of error is 70% of the estimate, we don't provide that information. So if you see anything that says suppressed or NA, that just means that the data is not reliable enough to share. So I'll do that there. So the other thing I'll mention too is that say this is a profile that you are really interested in, you want to keep it and go back to it. You can bookmark your profile. So you select that here, and you'll see at the top that there is a link, and that's your bookmarked profile. So you can take that, copy and paste it, send it to yourself, bookmark it, send it to a colleague, and then you'll always have that to go back to. Whenever you click on it, you'll have the most recent data available. So when we update this data, which is typically in January after the release of the American Community Survey data, that bookmark will include the most recent and updated data. So let me go back to the tool, and I'll do a couple of additional examples. So the compare adventure is here. Okay, I'll just do a couple of examples here. So again, I'm going to select on statewide and go to what I want to look at. Let's go to school districts this time. Just going to scroll into where I want to go. We'll go down to southern Minnesota today for the time being. So I'll just select these. Okay, and again, they show up here in your comparison group 1. Okay, and again, if you've selected one you didn't mean to, you can always go back and change that. And then once you're finished with your comparison group 1, you select here, and then you start adding your comparison group 2. Okay, and then you select view comparison. And so then those 2 comparisons show up. The same data table is there. It's just that you have 2 geographies listed, or 2 groups of geographies, however you've selected it. And again, you can collapse rows, bookmark or share the profile as needed, and then show your margins as you would like. And again, that comparison, it does not have to be in the same, here I'm going to start over. It does not have to be in the same geographic category. You can compare across counties. Let's do counties. I'll go to my next comparison group across cities. So you can compare any of these geographies that are relevant to you. Okay, and then we'll view that comparison. So then that same data table will show up there. So then the last adventure, if you will, I'm going to start this over, is the draw tool. So the draw tool has the same geographies listed here. And it's really more of a reference layer. It's really just a way for you to orient yourself as you are drawing your area. So I'm just going to do a couple of examples here. So we'll go back to school districts. Okay, we'll just zoom in here. And here are the draw tools listed here. So you've got drawing a polygon. These are both options for drawing a polygon, drawing a square here. And then this is drawing a radius around a particular area. And then you have a buffer that you can change it however you want different mileage to go outside of that area. So for example, if you wanted to do a 20-mile radius or a 30-mile radius, whatever makes the most sense to you, you could do that by changing this buffer area. I'm just going to change this here. So this is just an arbitrary example, but say these school districts are not the service area you're interested in, and you really need to draw across boundaries. You can draw this area here. It will select that area, and then you view the profile. And then the same data profile comes down for that area. Okay. We'll go to radius to show you how that works. So if you wanted to just drop this area here, and you can always change the area around that. And sometimes for the draw areas, it can take just a little bit of time. So be patient if it's taking just a minute to think. Okay, let's see. Oh, that one maybe didn't work quite the way I wanted it to. There we go. I had to click the buffer there. There we go. So in that 30-mile radius that I just built there around that area in that school district, there are about 113,000 people that live in that particular area. Okay, and again, the same features apply for any of the areas that you've drawn, because sometimes if you're building a really intricate area, you want to be able to save that. And so you're able to bookmark those and then come back to it as you would like to anytime to see the updated data. So I'm just going to stop there and see if anybody has any questions at this point.
Hi, Ellen. My name is Lydia Pfluger, and I work at the Department of Human Services in Child Safety and Prevention team. I'm curious to know if there are any plans for the tools to kind of look at any of the data across indicators. So, it'll come up with like, this is the population by race. This is what the income level is, but you can't really look at some of those things, cross tabulations, I guess you would say. I was just wondering if there's any plans or efforts to look at some of those indicators across each other. I think the best example would probably be like, okay, here's what it looks like for this population, here's how this indicator looks, here's what it looks like if you compare that across race.
Yep. Yep. So for example, looking at poverty by race or looking at housing indicators by
Mm-hmm.
race. Yeah. Well, we always are looking for feedback, Lydia, for if we can improve the tool. I think one of the challenges with including different breakdowns like that is that when you get to those really small geographic areas, the numbers are sometimes so small, particularly by race ethnicity, that we can't show that data. It's often suppressed. But it is something we could think about for some of the larger areas, where there is enough data. So I will definitely pass that feedback along.
Thank you. Because I have looked at like other, I was kind of curious to see how this looks in comparison to like some other maps, might be this Minnesota specific, and which has really great like local indicators around school districts and things like that to look at. But like other maps will include that, but sometimes I'm very skeptical for that same reason of some of that. Like they'll pull up stuff with race, and I'll be like, that seems like a really low number to like be drawing large conclusions from that. So, I know that is certainly a concern, but I was just, especially for those, areas in Minneapolis, what it might look like in this community, what it might look like in another area of Hennepin County for, that sort of. So certainly when we're just wondering if there was any plans to kind of look at, because all that data can be quite over, as you're saying, all the different layers of, and then you can collapse them, income, housing, all these different things. It's just a lot, and it's kind of hard to interpret that, like what does that actually mean based on different types of communities that might live in that area or different income levels or things like that. So
Sure. Yeah. Nope, that makes perfect sense, Lydia. Absolutely. Yep. And I'll pass that feedback along and our team can take a look at that suggestion. Absolutely. Any other questions about the tool? Great. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. I'm just going to share one last slide. I will mention, please feel free to reach out at any point if you're working on the tool and you have a question, you can't figure something out, or like Lydia's question, hey, do you have plans to, add this additional breakdown or this additional data? We're always happy to be in touch with you and learn about your suggestions and questions that you have. I'm just going to share my last slide very quickly with our information. We're happy to connect with you. Please feel free to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and then of course we have our old-fashioned email that you can connect with us that's listed on our website. And excuse me, and thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Say, Ellen.
Yeah.
This is Jen. It looks like Catherine has left, but they were interested to see if it was similar to the Help Seeker tool. I guess I'm personally not familiar with that, but
I'm not familiar with that tool, but I can take a look and get in touch with the person who asked the question at a later date if they want to drop their email in.
Thanks for demonstrating, Ellen. It's helpful. I think I was playing around with it before and I wasn't quite sure exactly some of the ways to do it as I was messing with it. So it was helpful just to see you demonstrate it. Because I was like, oh, I was doing it wrong. Like that's why it wasn't working for me. So,
well, good. I'm glad, Lydia. Yeah. And
helpful.
please feel free to reach out anytime. Happy to answer your questions.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Lydia. And then I don't know if Catherine's still on. Oh, it doesn't look like she's still on, but I'll have to take a look at the Help Seeker tool. Thanks, Jen, for your help today.
of course.